right, welcome everyone who is joining us for another week of the RedX podcast. This week we have with us special guest Ben Fairfield. Ben is an international speaker and respected leader in the real estate industry with a career built on coaching agents, developing leaders, and driving scalable growth. He has held executive roles at major brands including Keller Williams, eXp Realty, and RE/MAX, helping agents and brokerages improve productivity and build more profitable businesses. Ben is a sought-after voice at industry events. Ben brings practical, no-fluff insights on leadership, personal development, and business strategy. His mission is simple: empower real estate professionals to build high-performing teams and achieve lasting success. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ben. I'm excited to have you on.
Absolutely happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
I'd love to know, and just kind of jump right in.
Sure.
You've held multiple leadership and executive roles across major real estate brands. What originally drew you to coaching and leadership within the industry?
Yeah, good question. So ultimately, and anybody that's been in this industry longer than like 3 minutes understands that this is a bizarre industry, and I love it. This is my 21st year in it, so I'm not throwing rocks. However, this is a weird industry where we take people maybe who have had a lot of success outside of real estate. We throw them into this industry where they're self-employed. There's not a ton of direction, and we say, good luck. And I saw a lot of people churning. And, we have a huge churn rate in the industry. Over 80% don't have their license after 5 years. And so for me, when I got into it, seeing that's what really drew me to that side, because I saw there were a couple key pieces that if agents could grab a hold of, these talented agents who were failing out could actually succeed up. And that's kind of what pulled me to this side.
And from your perspective, why do so many agents struggle with consistency and productivity in today's market?
Yeah. We like to chase shiny objects and squirrels, right? So I think the key that I have seen over all these years, I wrestle with it too, because we're all human beings. But I think the key here is ultimately that agents who struggle don't necessarily have a business problem. Now, don't get me wrong, the bar is pretty low, so some maybe shouldn't be in the industry, but some actually could be. They're very talented, but they don't have a business problem. They got a focus problem, right? And so there's a lot of shiny objects. You know this. RedX knows this. I know this. It's at real estate. We see it. There's a lot of noise in our industry, and there's always someone coming along wanting to sell the next shiny object, pill, potion, whatever to agents. And so instead of consistently keeping their head down, doing the right things, they get pulled off, they get distracted, and then nothing ultimately gets done. The thing I actually shared last month when I was doing a talk was the truth is that consistency beats intensity every time. We see agents who join the industry, they come in, they're very excited, they got a lot of momentum. The reason they joined, it's fueling them, but they're not consistent. And the people that come in really with strong intensity, they're all kinds of excited, they're doing all the things. Unfortunately, they're the ones that burn out more times than not, versus the ones who are doing the boring stuff every day, the right stuff every day. They outlast the intense ones almost every single time.
I love that. And from people who are able to outlast that and not burn out, especially when they are in like a high performing team, what mindset shift do agents need to make if they truly want to scale their business?
I think it comes down to, there's a lot that you could probably put in that bucket. I think the biggest one is moving from a salesperson mindset to a business owner mindset, right? A lot of people get into real estate, they were employed somewhere else. And the problem is that they don't work for themselves the way they used to work for their employer when they were a traditional employee. And as agents, we're independent contractors. There's no one holding us accountable per se, unless we design that into our lives. And as a result, we can kind of just do a lot of the things we don't need to be focusing on, and instead of the stuff that we should focus on. So I think salespeople in general, that mindset tends to focus on transactions, right? So this is where when people set goals, yeah, a transactional goal is important. But that's a salesperson mindset. That's not that shouldn't be the leading goal. A salesperson thinks in transactions. A business owner thinks in terms of systems. And so in terms of scale and what allows some to outlast the others, that's really where I see this shift from I'm a salesperson to now I own a business. And not only do I own it, but I have to build it, right? And so I think when I help agents and brokerages, and now in my current role, being able to just see all different size companies, businesses, from solo agents all the way to 1,000+ people brokerages, they start asking themselves a question like, what processes can I build so that my next 100 deals or my next 1,000 deals or my next 10 deals are more predictable, right? So when they switch to focus to business owner, building something sustainable, they start focusing on systems, and that's when you can see things pretty dramatically change for them.
Along with systems, what are some other things at a brokerage or team level that directly impact agent performance?
Can you say that one more time?
Of course, yeah. So along with focusing on systems, what else at a brokerage or team level directly impacts agent performance that they should be aware of?
I think it comes down to leadership, right? So there's two different kinds here for the purpose of what we're talking about. The first is leadership in the organization that they're a part of, right? Because as an agent, more than likely you're in a brokerage, you have a leader in that brokerage who is kind of charting the course, casting the vision, hopefully motivating, training, that sort of thing. And so I think leadership is really what determines a lot. So leadership in the brokerage, the actual physical figurehead, if you will, the person in the office that you're working with, they determine the ceiling of what's capable in that organization. Meaning, if they're growing, they're going to attract other people who want to grow. They're going to create an environment for growth to happen where it becomes a part of the culture. And without that, agents get stagnant, right? And I think the second part of that leadership that I see is really important is self-leadership. Because we can take, and I've run offices for a long time. We can have agents, put them in a culture where growth and leadership is strong, and everyone's pushing the same direction, wanting to grow a business. But if they don't want it themselves, you can't help them, right? So it's combination of, I need to lead myself as a business owner, because at the end of the day, it's my business. It's not anyone else's responsibility. But then I need to put myself in an environment with a leader who is kind of charting the course and blazing the trail for me. Because ultimately, my experience has taught me that agents really need three things to thrive, regardless of brand, regardless of company size, regardless of structure. They really need three things. And that's clarity, accountability, and belief, right? They need clarity on what's the right stuff I should be doing, clarity on what's happening in the market, clarity on how should I be thinking about building my business or refining it. That's the clarity component. Accountability, everyone shies away from it because we don't necessarily love it, but we all love the byproduct of it, right? So accountability is a key component. It's simply holding people to what they said they were going to do. So an environment where we get people to make commitments and then we hold them able to deliver on those for themselves. It's for their own benefit because it's their business. And then that belief piece, it's really belief in them. You know, I was at an event with John Maxwell years ago, and he actually had Les Brown come, and it was a surprise. We didn't know he was going to be there. And I'll never forget, and I'm sure he said it a bajillion times, but it was just perfect timing, hit me right between the eyes. He said, sometimes we have to borrow other people's belief in ourselves. And I love that one because I see that with agents too, right? They're coming in starry-eyed, they're excited, they see all the potential, they have all the excitement, but they don't have any evidence yet. And so agents need those three things. They need clarity, accountability, and belief. And a lot of times, great leaders should be providing all three of those. That's kind of the secret sauce that we see. That's what makes the difference between an average team or an exceptional team, an average office or a phenomenal office. It's really that leadership that creates the environment where that's just part of the norm. Because the truth is, you, me, all the agents listening, brokers listening, we don't rise to our potential. We rise to the standards that we are in and amongst, right? So we need to find an environment that has higher standards if we want bigger returns. And so leadership really is that key.
I really love that. For agents who feel stuck in their production, what are the first 3 steps they should take to reset and to grow?
So agents feeling stuck, I think we probably have a lot of them like that right now in this market based on what's been happening. It's been a fairly flat couple of years from a transactional standpoint with a high membership count. So if I'm working with agents, brokerages, whoever, business owners, the first thing I would say is really look at your lead sources, right? Now, I'm not just saying that because we're on the Red X podcast, right? So you do you figure out what your lead sources are, but we really need to, if it's me, I'm going to look at what are the lead sources that I'm paying for or not paying for, because I can pay for them with money or I can pay for them with time. They're still both an expense. So I need to look at all of my lead sources for my business and really ask the hard question of what is it doing for my business? Is it producing a return? Because one of the worst things I see happening is agents giving more and more time to lead sources that they may enjoy doing, but doesn't produce result for the business. And so I think step one, I would just look at the lead sources, figure out what's working, what's not. You got to be completely objective. This also can be a really good opportunity to bring somebody else in to do this exercise with you, because I don't know about you, but I'm not objective all the time when it comes to my own business and my life and things like that. So this is where that accountability piece maybe shows up. So audit the leads. And then once I look at my lead sources, if it's me in this market, I'm going to look at the 2 or 3 that are producing the most results, and I'm going to move 80 to 90% of my effort into those 2 or 3. I'm going to double down on those 2 or 3, because the other fatal flaw for a lot of agents right now is they're trying to be a generalist, right? They're trying to do a little bit of everything. And the problem with that is they don't ever get great at any one thing. And so audit your lead source, shift your resource, your time, your energy, your money, all those things to the 2 or 3 that are giving you the best return. That's the first one. The second one comes down to habits, I think. I think daily prospecting, it's not sexy. It's not exciting. It's not fun all the time. But I had the opportunity to work with Gary Keller for quite a long time. I'll never forget, we were at a mastermind in Austin, Texas with him. And I want to credit the phrase to him because I didn't come up with it, but I'll never forget it. He said, the millions are always in the mundane. The millions are always in the mundane. And so as agents, we get bored easy, right? I'm speaking about me too, so I'm not judging anybody, but we get super bored super quick. And so that's why we're always looking for the next cool thing. We go to conventions and conferences and we hear all these other people doing all these things, but we forget that this is a simple business at its heart, right? It isn't getting more complicated. As much as it changes, there's just as much that doesn't change. And it's a relationship-based business. So I think after you audit the lead sources, you've got to get back to, how do I daily discipline in lead generation? How do I get to that daily prospecting space where I do that no matter what? Not like when just I feel like it, but when it's a must do. Like if I only do that in a day, I win the day. So that's what I would say is kind of figure out, how do I reprioritize that lead generation and that daily prospecting. And then the third, I think, probably ties in with that a bit, and that's reconnecting with the database. And I know that's like, everyone's listening is probably like, oh, wow, these are really fascinating, mind-blowing things, right? But if you were doing them, you probably wouldn't be searching for a solution around them, right? So reconnecting with the database, it's the number one best thing we can do for our business. For most businesses, it's probably one of the bigger lead sources, and it's also one of the first that we put down or set aside when the market gets busy. So a lot of agents and offices and teams that I'm talking to in the last 12, 18 months, they've realized they've set their database aside. They haven't been as proficient and efficient reaching out to them and consistent in reaching out to them. And so they're really focusing and doubling down on putting together a strategy and plan to get back to them, because ultimately those 3, that's what I would do. That's what I'm encouraging folks to do. But I think the key to remember is, like, momentum in real estate, momentum in this industry, it's not complicated. It's not without hard work, but it's not complicated. We make it complicated, right? So momentum in this industry is all conversations. And so we need to figure out, look objectively at our business, look at how we're spending our time, look on our calendar. I color code my calendar still to this day, so I can look every week. Where am I investing my time? Is it dollar producing activities or is it other stuff? And so I think the opportunity for agents who may be plateaued or struggling or wanting to take it to the next level, it's really just looking at those 3 things and getting back to the basics, and then figuring out, how do I discipline myself to stick with this consistently? Because it all sounds good, right? It's all easy to say, yeah, that makes sense, and I'll go do it. Are you still doing it 40, 60, 90 days from now? That's the question.
For agents that may have those 3 things down, what are the most common productivity leaks you see when coaching agents and working with teams that agents should be aware of and look for and work on?
Oh, well, I think we touched on the last one. It's calendar is number one thing that comes to mind, right? I would imagine most people listening to this wish that there were more hours in the day and more of them. And that's not because that there needs to be, it's because typically we're not good stewards of our time, right? We lack discipline when it comes to our schedule. We very easily make everyone else's problems our problems. We very, very quickly allow other people's demands to change the demands of our business. And so we're always going to get back to that, or we'll do it later, or we'll do it tomorrow. And the problem is that compounds just like consistency. And then tomorrow never shows up. So I think discipline regarding our schedule and our time, I think that's a big one. The other one is poor follow-up systems. And I was guilty of this as an agent. I'm still an agent and a broker. So again, I'm not judging anybody here because I'm talking to myself, but I think poor follow-up is key. You think about post-pandemic market that we were in, people were writing offers on the hoods of cars before they walked in the house. Like, it was fast-paced, it was moving, it was clicking. And so if we didn't follow up with somebody, no problem, because there's going to be 7 more coming in behind them on the website the next day, right? Well, guess what? That's not normal. We all know that if we've been in it longer than a couple of years. But it doesn't change the fact that most agents really lack strong follow-up systems, right? Not just like, here's the script I say, but what's the process I follow? What's the system? Which is one of the reasons I came to work at Inside Real Estate, because I just believe in the product. I was a user of the product before I came here, but I have to, as an agent, have a system that isn't dependent upon me to make sure follow-up happens consistently. Because what we're also seeing, and we don't have time for this today, happy to share this data with you, but we see lots of consumer data because we're across the country in almost every MLS. The consumer timelines are incredibly expanding. Like, they are dramatically increasing. And that's not a bad thing. It just means they're taking longer in the decision-making process. And so what that tells me is that's going to be an opportunity of huge scale for agents that have a good follow-up system. And it's going to also be a problem for agents that don't. So I think the follow-up systems are big. And then along with that, I think it's the whole busy versus productive concept. I don't know if you've heard that or not, or if your listeners have, but it's really easy. We get home and our significant other or whoever asks us, like, hey, how was your day? And you're like, man, it was so crazy. It was absolutely busy. It was just nuts. And like, well, what did you work on? What were a couple of things you worked on? And you're like, I don't really remember the day. It was just really busy. That's where most agents live, unfortunately. And there's a big difference between busy and productive. Like, it's really easy to find a bunch of stuff that keeps me busy, but that distracts me and is not the same as the stuff that keeps me and makes me productive. And so clearly identifying as an agent, a broker, a team owner, whatever your role, what's the most dollar productive activity or activities you can do in a given day? Focus on those things, make those the priority, and then force the busy work to fill in and around it. I think those would be probably the more common productivity things that we see.
For team leaders or brokers that may be listening and want to help support their agents in these practices, really avoid that plateauing and the other things that we've talked about, how can they create accountability without burning their agents out?
Yeah. So I've run a very large nationwide team. I've been on a team. I've been a solo agent and managed offices with teams. Like, I've seen this from every different facet of the diamond, right? So I think accountability is a double-edged sword. It's incredibly important for where we're going, for the success we desire. You're never going to find anybody that consistently achieves at a high level that doesn't have high levels of accountability built into their process. At the same time, if it's done incorrectly, it can lead to burnout, right? So I think the biggest key in how do we get accountability worked into our office, our team, our own business, whatever that situation is, the biggest key is clarity. Because what I've seen, what I know to be true or believe to be true, is that burnout really happens when expectations are not clear. And yet the pressure mounts, right? So we see this with team owners and offices a lot, right? They don't quite have clarity over the goals, but they're telling everyone we're going in this general direction. And then something happens in the business or the market plateaus a little bit. The pressure that the team feels or the office feels from that leader increases because the pressure in the leader is increasing. However, the team members don't know what the heck they can do to help, right? And so I think I'm going to give you a couple book recommendations. The first one here is 4 Disciplines of Execution. I'm not attached to any of these companies. I get nothing for it. So do what you will. But I've run multiple companies off of the scoreboard concept out of this book. And so it's the Franklin Covey organization. Tons of research went into the book. highly recommend it. But it's exactly what you're talking about here. So what I know to be true is that great leaders, great business owners create incredibly simple scoreboards, right? Because we have to know if we're winning or losing. Like if we're competitive people, with which most agents are, I have to know, am I winning or am I losing? Because if I don't know, then I'm just doing stuff and not having a clue if it's making an impact, right? And so when I'm working with agents, teams, offices, whatever, even inside of a Bold Trail platform, it's really focused on the key things, which in my mind, conversations, number one, how many conversations are you having? Then how many appointments are you setting? And how many contracts are you writing? When we can distill it down to those three things, it does a few things. First, it gives extreme clarity to everybody that's playing the game with us. But second, and I think almost more importantly, it gives the leader the opportunity to kind of coach and prescribe along the way. Meaning if I'm tracking these three things for my team, my office, whatever the situation is, I'm tracking these things and then I'm tracking them individually by person. If I see that Sue on my team is knocking it out of the park with conversations, she's knocking it out of the park with appointments, but she's not getting a lot under contract. Okay, that tells me as the coach and leader, then she needs some help on conversion because she's getting the appointments, she's not getting the contracts. That helps me help her, more specifically help her. Right? Versus if I have somebody that's having a lot of conversations and not getting any appointments, then it's a scripting and dialogue thing around what are you saying or not saying to get the appointment set. So it brings clarity to the individual players, but it also brings clarity to the team and it drives towards more success for the business, whatever the business is.
I really love that. That's so great. Sorry, I'm still trying to wrap my brain around it. It sounds so simple and yet it's so important. And as team leaders are doing this for their team, as a team member, what are simple daily or weekly schedules or walkthroughs that top producers consistently follow and that they can consistently do to do their part to improve?
Yeah, so I think this goes back to habits and routines. Right now, there's a lot of books out there that talk about getting up at 5 a.m. and doing, and again, I'm not against any of those things. Like if that works for you, that's fine. I don't think there's a magical time, but consistently what I do see, I've been very fortunate to be able to spend the majority of my time the last 14 years or so with some of the biggest producers in real estate in our industry. And what's fascinating is you see patterns, right? And there's always clues, kind of like breadcrumbs. And one of the patterns that I see always for the top producers is that they're always disciplined in how they use the first part of their day, meaning whatever they determine. Now, I think it's probably lead generation, but whatever they determine their top dollar producing activities are, they will almost to death defend the time in the morning to get that done. Because here's what we know that life is going to happen that day. We know that fires are going to pop up. We know there's going to be challenges and issues, no question. And so the only time I have that I can consistently ensure that the stuff that has to get done, that's most critical that gets done for my business actually happens, is by making that the first thing that I do every single day and then leaving space for other stuff to fill around it. But I think that's probably, if I had to boil it into one discipline, it's how they use the first part of their day, whether that's 5 a.m. or 9 a.m. The time doesn't matter, but the first part of their day, they're always protecting for dollar producing activities.
And for agents that feel overwhelmed with too many strategies, for example, a lot of people swear by cold calling or by social media or postcards, door knocking. Like there's so many things that you can do, and there's so many agents that are killing it in those different areas. How should they decide what to implement first versus like what to ignore?
Yeah. So I think the question is a good one, because I think we're coming out of convention season right now too, right? And one of the best and worst things about conventions is top producers on stage. And here's what I mean by that before people click off and get ticked off. What I mean by that is it's amazing to celebrate top producers. And to your point, there are agents that are killing it with every single type of strategy you could imagine. And it doesn't mean that any of those are wrong, but here's the most important thing. It also doesn't mean that all of them are right for me. And I think it's really easy for us when we go to these conventions, we see these people on stage and they say, oh, I'm doing this thing and that thing, and here's the system I'm using. And we automatically think, great, then I have to do it. And so I think that the trap is in this kind of a market, as we're looking to kind of accelerate out of the turn in the market, we're trying to position ourselves to take advantage of a market improving. It's going to be about doing fewer things much more proficiently and consistently rather than trying to do more things halfway. right? So I don't think most agents need another strategy or necessarily need another lead gen lever. I think they lack commitment to a few. And so when I'm talking to agents, brokers, we just came from a big convention. People were coming to the booth, and I gave them these 3 questions. The first of the 3 questions that I would always ask myself before I adopted anything, before I even considered adopting a strategy, a lead gen lever, whatever it was, the first question I would ask was, does this line up with my strengths? For instance, if somebody's on stage talking about they do video and they do social videos and they do funny, cheesy videos, if you're a reserved person, that's probably not in alignment with your strengths. It doesn't mean that you aren't capable. It means that it's not in alignment with your strengths, meaning you aren't going to be fulfilled doing it, which means you're probably not going to do it long-term or consistently. So that's the first one. Is this thing that we're considering, does it line up with who I am and what my strengths are? Because if not, that's okay. It doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's probably not the right thing for me, at least right now. The second one that it comes from the first is, can I see myself or the business actually doing this consistently for 12 months? Because for instance, postcards, I know a lot of people are gonna be like, oh, great, he's talking about print mail. I still send postcards for my business because the mailbox is an incredibly quiet place right now. It used to be super noisy. Then the internet came along and everyone stopped mailing, right? So the key though, and why I bring that up is a lot of people hear me say that and they say, okay, great, I'm gonna go do postcards. And I say, hold off. If you're not willing to do it for 12 months, don't start it because it is a long play. It's a process. It's not an event. So you got to ask yourself, second question is do I see myself or the business actually doing this for 12 months consistently? And then third, and probably one of the most important ones that I ask myself is will this lead to actual conversations with real clients? Is this actually going to put me in a position to have meaningful conversations with actual buyers and sellers? Because right now I see a lot of agents who every time there's a new AI prompt, they go on and do it. And it's just my social media feed is filled with all this weird social AI prompted imagery. And again, whatever you do, you and your off time, if that's your hobby, cool. But none of that stuff is producing conversations with real buyers and real sellers. And so that's the third question is it might be fun. I might really like it, but is it going to actually lead to conversations? Because if not, if you can't say yes to all 3 of those things, then what you're looking at likely is a distraction, not a strategy.
You've already lightly touched on this, but for the sake of clarity, as the real estate landscape continues to shift, especially as things like AI start to come more into play, how do you see the role of an agent evolving over the next few years?
Yeah, so I get this question a lot. And I was actually, for our podcast, I was just interviewing the founder of an AI company. We had this very conversation because right now, if you look at I won't say the names, but if you look at a lot of the news groups in the real estate industry, they use fear-based headlines because their job is to get clicks and traffic, right? So let's just be clear. They're going to always, just like the newspapers, just like TV, they're always going to use fear to try to motivate action. And so we see a lot of the headlines right now are agents are going to be replaced by AI, or they pose it as a question, but it's saying the same thing. And ultimately, whether it's AI or different parts of technology, what I want to make sure that everyone hears me on is that agents are never going to be replaced by technology. They're never going to be replaced by AI. However, the ones that don't figure out how to level up in other areas of the service they provide could. And here's what I mean by that. AI and technology can never sit down and have a two-way conversation as a human, an advisory conversation, a consultative conversation. You don't have a relationship. I know some people do. Some people get married to AI. That's weird. But most people don't have a relationship with technology or AI the same way they would as a person. And so, the answer I give, in my honest opinion, the future agent has to be something that's way more valuable than a door opener, right? And I think back to when I started 21 years ago, the MLS still came out in a book once a week. We didn't even have the MLS online yet. That's how old I am, right? So we've evolved that far in relatively a short amount of time. And what's interesting is I remember when the online MLS thing was in conversation, it was coming to fold. There were so many agents that were absolutely convinced this was going to replace us. Our value was having the data and having the books and making people come to us. That was our value. And we know how that worked out. That's not the case, right? But agents, teams, owners, if your value proposition is simply, I help show houses, you will be replaced, right? So the value proposition has to be something significantly bigger. It has to be a lot more relational. It has to be giving context. Like I've been posting lately, as we look at a lot of data coming out on national, you look at any three markets in the US, it's three completely different stories about how's the market, right? And so understanding, being that local expert, understanding what the nuances of your local market are, being able to help clients interpret what that might mean for their situation. There's a lot more value that really good agents provide to their clients, but we have to be able to articulate that and we have to lead with that versus I can show you homes and open doors and write a contract. That's not the hard part. That's not the valuable part of our job, in my opinion.
And where do you see the biggest opportunity right now for agents willing to adapt? Not just AI, but adapt in general as times evolve.
I think right now, and I had this conversation, I spoke in Portugal for a European company in September, and we had this very conversation because their market in Europe is very different than ours. However, every market has some commonalities, right? And so what we talked about, and I believe it's true for this question and for everybody listening in the States as well, that the biggest opportunity today is actually the exact same opportunity that's in every market that's shifting or changing. Because right now we're in a market that's kind of finding back its equilibrium. It's getting back to what we would consider sustainable, more of a normal market. The opportunity is for agents that can bring extreme clarity and focus to their business, do the audit like we talked about on what's working in their business, double down on the 2 or 3 things that are actually working, and lean in more, right? Because the tendency for a lot of agents when the market's uncertain like this or it feels kind of flat, the tendency is agents take their foot off the gas. And what I've seen, this is my 4th time the market has done something like this. And what I've seen almost every single time is that the agents that pull their foot off the brake, or off the gas rather, they get passed really quickly by the agents who are leaning in because there's opportunity in absolutely every market. It's just not seen or found by every single person because not every agent's looking. So I think getting real with your business, doing the audit, moving and shifting resources into what's actually producing results, focusing on consistency, and then leaning in, not letting up. I think that's what's going to be the story of people who are celebrating their best year ever this time next year versus those that aren't in the business next year.
If you could give one piece of advice to agents to future-proof their business, regardless of market conditions, what would that be?
Yeah, probably broken record here, but it's heartfelt, genuine answer. I think you got to build a relationship business. Technology, AI, nothing can take your relationships. However, I see a lot of agents building transaction businesses, right? They're one and done. They do a deal, they never talk to the person again. We see the stats, nearly 30+% of the leads that are generated online in general are never ever followed up with, not even one time. And so a lot of agents, instead of looking at this as a relationship, even if it's a new lead, even if it's a prospect or a suspect, like I've not even talked to them, it's still a human being. And at some point, they're going to do some kind of a transaction. My opportunity is to build a relationship with them, not see them as a number, not see them as a transaction, right? Because we know that the algorithms change, technology changes, the market changes, like everything changes, but relationships compound. Like it's relationships are the one thing that outlast all change that we have seen or will see in this industry. And so the agents who consistently invest in people and their database, their sphere of influence, whatever you want to call it, their past clients, their referrals, their community, those are businesses that will not just survive market changes, but will thrive through any market change.
I love that. And I know we've talked about so many different things, but I'd love to know, is there anything I didn't ask that you think our listeners should know?
I don't know if you didn't ask that they should know. I think one thing that's kind of been on my heart and my mind lately is I think agents need to figure out how they can position themselves as the market authority, right? Because here is the double-edged sword again. Technology is great, AI is great, internet's awesome, but the problem with that is if our clients are getting interpretation of what's happening in the market, what will be happening in the market, what's happening with rates, if they're making decisions based on anyone's opinion other than ours, then we've already started to lose that relationship. And so what I'm focused on currently, what I'm encouraging those who work with us to focus on is really figure out in your local market, how can you set yourself apart? How can you position yourself as the local expert that's the go-to person for questions and interpretation on what's happening? Because they're being absolutely bombarded with what's happening nationally. But what we know to be true, and the data proves it out every time, and as recently as yesterday we pulled the data, the national data means very little in the majority of the markets. It's all micro markets, hyper-local data, hyper-local changes and nuances. And so I think agents, if you want to really build momentum in this kind of a market, figure out how to position yourself as that person. Figure out where you can get the data. I was told a long time ago, you don't want to be the source, you want to be a resource. So I don't ever cite my own gut feeling. I'm always finding data, and I'm citing the data. I'm sorting through it, helping though understand and interpret what's the data telling, what's the story or the message that the data is telling. You can get good at that. You will build as big of a business as you want to, because you're going to be providing value in a way that most other agents don't.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ben. You gave us so many good insights and so much good information. For agents that may want to reach out to you, to contact you, ask more questions, whatever it may be, what would the best way to connect with you be?
Absolutely. So a couple ways. First off, Facebook, that's going to be the fastest way. I'm on LinkedIn as well, Instagram, and then my website's benfairfield.com. All are easy, but definitely connect with me on Facebook. Would love to connect with everybody, and hopefully see everybody at some kind of an industry convention here in the next year.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to everybody listening. We'll see you all next week for another episode.